Veterans react with fury at President Trump's claim that NATO troops avoided the front line.
You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that, and they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
His comments come despite the 457 British personnel who died in Afghanistan. Downing Street condemned the comments as wrong, and there is outrage among families and those who served.
To suggest that the British forces, and indeed those of our NATO partners, weren't putting in a shift in Afghanistan is a deeply offensive thing to suggest.
Also this lunchtime, an exclusive poll shows 2/3 of us are affected by health anxiety. We've a special report on the so-called cyberchondria being fueled by AI. The micropubs proving a big hit with mounting closures across the sector. How small venues from former shops to public toilets are bucking the trend. And from the DJ who was there, the inside story of what really happened at Brooklyn Beckham's wedding.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Charlotte Hawkins.
Good afternoon. Veterans have condemned the US President Donald Trump over his suggestion that NATO troops, including British forces, stayed back from the Afghanistan front lines. 457 British soldiers died there after joining the American-led invasion in 2001. This lunchtime, the Prime Minister's spokesman insisted their sacrifice will never be forgotten, and he dismissed Mr. Trump's remarks as wrong. The conflict, which ultimately lasted 20 years, claimed more than 3,500 coalition lives. Rosie Dowsing reports.
The front line in Afghanistan, where hundreds of British troops paid the ultimate sacrifice. So this, from President Donald Trump on US television, does not sit well over here.
We've never needed them. They'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that, and they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
The comments came from a president who admits he avoided military service himself by deferring the Vietnam call-up multiple times. Now outraged this morning from across the political spectrum, including this minister.
I am deeply disappointed by what President Trump said there. I think it is completely wrong.
And there was disbelief from an MP who served in Afghanistan's deadliest battleground.
Sangin is a place where we took nearly a third of all British Army casualties in Afghanistan. Indeed, we handed over to the US Marines ultimately, who took a similar rate of casualties there. To suggest that the British forces, and indeed those of our NATO partners, weren't putting in a shift in Afghanistan is a deeply offensive thing.
NATO's Article 5 states an armed attack against one member shall be considered an attack against them all. It was triggered shortly after 9/11 with this call to action.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
And the UK answered that call, sustaining almost 500 fatalities, suffering the second highest number of military deaths in the Afghanistan conflict behind the US. To say those troops avoided the front line is to their families the ultimate insult, and from a man who himself famously stepped back from the military call-up. Rosie Dowsing, ITV News.
As we've heard, politicians from across the divide have rounded on the president's comments. The Conservatives called them nonsense. The Lib Dems said he should be ashamed. And this lunchtime, Downing Street condemned the remarks, insisting Donald Trump was wrong to diminish the contributions of NATO forces. Our political reporter, Jasmine Cameron-Chaleshi, is outside number 10 for us. And Jasmine, not for the first time this week, the Prime Minister standing up to the President.
That's right, and as you say, across the political spectrum, there's been a huge condemnation for the US president's remarks. As you say, the Lib Dem leader Sarah Davey described them as a huge insult. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch said the remarks were nonsense. And the government, which up until recently has been pretty reluctant to criticise President Trump, was quite stark in its language this afternoon. So Number 10 described it as wrong to diminish the role of NATO troops, including British forces. And a spokesperson for the Prime Minister said that 457 British service personnel lost their lives in Afghanistan, serving alongside the US and its allies, while many others were wounded and suffered life-changing injuries. Downing Street also made clear that it was proud of the armed forces, adding that their service and sacrifice would not be forgotten. Now, these latest remarks follow a series of incidents that have really put a strain on UK-US relations. Over the past few days, President Trump has really antagonised UK and European allies over his threat of a trade war over his acquiring of Greenland. Meanwhile, his criticism of Britain's plans to give the Chagos Islands to Mauritius also caused surprise and alarm among UK officials. Now, Downing Street this afternoon insisted that the UK-US special relationship was as strong as ever, with partnership in key areas like security and defence. But certainly the events over the past few days are really going to cause a lot of questioning among UK officials as to how best to handle quite an unpredictable and outspoken US president.
Jasmine, thanks very much. To news of a still ongoing conflict now, and direct peace talks are due to take place for the first time today between Ukraine, Russia and the US. Yesterday in Moscow, Vladimir Putin met with the American Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. The Kremlin said one major issue remains to be resolved in negotiations. But speaking last night, the US president was optimistic progress could be made in ending the war in Ukraine.
We'll see if I can get it done. I mean, it would never have gotten done. I thought Putin wanted the whole thing. Maybe he does, but he's not gonna be going there unless we don't make a deal. We had a good meeting today with President Zelensky. I think a very good meeting. There were times when Putin didn't want to make a deal, times when Zelensky didn't want to make a deal, and it was like opposite times. Now I think they both want to make a deal, but we'll find out.
An exclusive ITV poll has found that 2/3 of Brits suffer from health-related anxiety. It can be a debilitating condition where the fear of getting ill becomes utterly overwhelming. And in the age of artificial intelligence, experts are worried it's getting worse. That's because patients are turning to chatbots to try to diagnose every symptom they encounter. Some call it cyberchondria, using the internet to look up health information. Philip Syme has this report.
I am tired all the time.
Is it
symptoms?
This is what's known as health anxiety, when the fear of being ill takes over your life, leading sufferers like Vicky to spiral.
You're checking how you're feeling, how you're thinking. Is your heart racing too much? I was going to the doctor probably 3 to 4 times a week.
2/3 of Brits experience health-related anxiety. Over a quarter have booked a GP appointment after looking up their symptoms using AI. And almost 1/3 feel that doing that makes them feel more anxious. There is a treatment which can help, though, a type of cognitive behavioural therapy. Experts say frontline medical staff need to be trained in it.
We've almost got the NHS to adopt a training programme, but they haven't quite got there yet. We can have treatments available so that the people who come up repeatedly with health anxiety can actually have an intervention.
NICE, which advises the NHS, told us it is considering new guidance on health anxiety, and the government said it is investing in mental health workers while expanding NHS talking therapies. For the many still at war with their worries, it is help which is badly needed. Philip Syme, ITV News.
Well, let's explore this more. Joining me now is the GP, Dr. Ellie Cannon. Thanks for coming in to talk about this. I mean, it's really worrying, isn't it? The number of people that it's affecting, 2/3 of us here in Britain. That's a substantial number.
It is, and this actually doesn't surprise me because this is something that I see so often in clinic where people have either sort of taken on board internet fiction as medical fact Or what we see also very commonly is not just AI information, but actually consumer information. So people being sold health products when they really think they're being sold health information.
So there's a few things going on here, people searching up symptoms, AI chatbots. Those are the big reasons behind this, you think?
Yeah, and people AI has obviously exploded and people are sort of using it very much without the sort of knowledge behind it. But what people have to understand with AI is whatever goes into AI is also what comes out. So if the internet is full of consumer health information, health misinformation, and fiction, that is what is being channeled into these large language modules and the sort of things people are using in terms of AI. So that's what you're going to get out. You're not going to get out health information from experts or from guidelines or from doctors like myself, because there's just so much fiction out there.
And it's a real worry, isn't it? You know, not just the impact for the person involved on their well-being, but also for you as a doctor. That's then taking up unnecessary appointments, there's the cost of that, and the fact that people will then find it harder to get an appointment with their doctor because of it.
That's right, and also the pathways people go down can actually be very damaging. So, for example, there's a very well-known phenomenon on social media where younger women are almost convinced by their algorithm that they won't be able to get pregnant and therefore they should invest in egg freezing. And that's totally driven by consumerism and social media use. And that's putting a woman on an incredibly dangerous and unnecessary health journey that then could have other health implications.
So what's your advice then on what should be done? There are therapies that can help, aren't there? We know that NICE are looking at guidelines on this. Is that what's needed, do you think?
I think that's what's needed. I think we need to be far more savvy about what we're looking at. If you're looking for health information online, look at the patient support charities. The NHS website is fantastic. There's really good information there. Ask yourself, am I being sold something? Where is this information coming from? Because that really is fueling this anxiety.
And the worry is, isn't it, that actually we could see this getting worse with more and more people using the internet to get their health advice, and also pressure on those doctor's appointments. So instead of people thinking, like perhaps they might have done in the old days, I'll go and just check with the doctor, is this okay? The first port of call is to look at the internet, isn't it? To find out whether there's something they should worry about.
Yeah, and you'll know as well as I do that there certainly isn't the space and capacity in GP surgeries to be answering and helping people almost with this type of issue. And therefore we would rather that people sort of came in if they are worried about something to do with their health, rather than coming in having worried themselves from what they've read online.
Okay, so that's your message to people today then, is it? To still make that appointment with the doctor.
Yeah.
Don't go down that spiral of checking those symptoms online, perhaps putting your health at risk because of that.
Yeah, and look at verified sources of information, the NHS, patient support groups, patient charities. Have a look at that rather than sort of going down these rabbit warrens, and always ask yourself if you're being sold something, because invariably you are.
Okay, good advice, Dr. Ellie Cannon there. Thanks very much. And there is more on this online, where you can also find details of services offering help and support. Head to our website, itv.com/news. Some other news now, and activists in Iran say more than 5,000 people have now been killed in the authorities' crackdown on protests. Around 20,000 are believed to have been arrested after ongoing protests across the country. Human rights activist news agency warns the death toll could be much higher than government figures. Official numbers cannot be verified due to the country's continuing internet blackout. 6 people are still missing after a landslide hit a New Zealand campsite yesterday. 2 people have died as a result of the incident. Emergency services are still searching for others believed to be buried in the rubble. And millions of Americans are braced for an Arctic blast. Some parts of the country have already seen temperatures drop below zero. Forecasters predict that some areas could see power outages for days, and big cities, including Washington and New York, might see enough snow to make travel nearly impossible. Here, the UK's largest beer campaign group, CAMRA, today warned of a pub's crisis. They say, on average, one pub is shutting its doors each day. Many of the country's smallest licensed outlets are reporting big success. They include former dry cleaners, unused offices, and even public loos. Our consumer editor Chris Choi is at one of Britain's smallest pubs in Margate.
Well, just look at this. They're calling them pint-sized pubs, and we're starting with the camera outside, so you get an idea of the small scale that we're talking about here. But if Kevin, the cameraman, comes in, you'll get a really clear view. As you see, there's room for about 2 people to sit down, perhaps another 2 to stand at the bar. I'm told that once there were 14 people crammed in here, but that would be the absolute upper limit. And joining me here is Dean Mason, who's co-owner of this little gem. Dean, how do you explain it? In a background where pubs are generally struggling, 1 closure a day on average, why is it that these small ones seem to be bucking the trend?
Well, I believe people still want that community spirit, and obviously trying to maintain a huge building nowadays is impossible, but small ones like these, a bit more feasible.
Yeah, so your overheads are lower, but obviously your takings are lower, profits must be lower. I mean, are these sustainable, or is it just one of those fads?
We do all right, don't get me wrong,
And I suppose the novelty as well is a factor here, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think people do love a nice quirky pub. It's something different. They love coming in, taking photos.
I'm not surprised. It's wonderful to be here, and certainly you get a very, very personal service. Thanks, Dean. And just before we go, a quick shout out to the Pub of the Year that was announced this morning by the beer campaigners CAMRA. It's the Tamworth Tap in Staffordshire, and I mention it now because although it's expanded, it started as one of these small venues as well, with just a handful of tables. So raise a glass to these tiny taverns.
Cheers to that, Chris Choi there. Now, pharmacists say they have had to ration supplies of painkillers because of a shortage of aspirin. The industry body says the problem has become so bad that some chemists have had to stop over-the-counter sales. They are prioritising the tablets for those most in need. Our reporter, Carrie Davis, has been looking into this. And Carrie, talk us through then what's behind these shortages and what patients should do.
Well, as you mentioned, Charlotte, aspirin is a painkiller, but it's also a vital medication for many people who use it as a blood thinner. It's often prescribed in lower doses to prevent heart attacks and strokes. And it's these lower doses of 75 milligrams that's being particularly affected by this shortage. The National Pharmacy Association says that pharmacists in the UK have been rationing, like you say, to prioritise people with the most acute heart conditions, all those in need of emergency prescriptions. A survey of more than 500 UK pharmacies last week found that 86% reported being unable to supply aspirin to patients in the previous 7 days. Now, the government recently banned the export of aspirin to try and protect supplies. It's believed that manufacturing issues and problems with the supply chain are to blame, and as a result, the price has gone up too. So the NPA says that a packet of 75 milligram aspirin tablets that was less than 20 pence last year is now costing around £4. To tackle the supply issues more broadly, there have been calls for changes to the rules to allow pharmacists to offer patients alternative medicines when there is a shortage like this, and that is something that the government is reportedly looking into. The Department of Health says that it's inherited ongoing global supply problems, but it has robust measures in place to mitigate disruption for patients.
Okay, let's hope that that's the case. Thanks very much, Cammy. Thousands of people living with advanced prostate cancer will benefit from a life-extending drug, talazapirab, given the NHS go-ahead today. It comes as the government promised it was ending what they called a postcode lottery for cancer care. Ministers say training more doctors will help address health inequalities, particularly in rural and coastal communities. And Britain's biggest airport, Heathrow, has become the latest to fully scrap the 100 millilitre liquid container limit. It's after the airport completed the rollout of new high-tech scanners. It means passengers can keep liquids and electronic devices in their hand luggage when going through security. Hundreds gathered in Rome this morning for the funeral of the fashion designer Valentino. Anna Wintour and Elizabeth Hurley were among those who came to celebrate the life of the Italian designer. He died on Monday, aged 93. His fashion house was based in the Italian capital, where mourners lined up to pass in front of his casket on Wednesday and bid their final farewell. And finally, 4 days on from Beckham's explosive allegations against his parents, his wedding DJ has told ITV what really happened on the dance floor. 26-year-old Brooklyn claimed this week that his mother had hijacked his romantic moment. He said she had danced inappropriately on him in front of their guests. Neither Lady Victoria nor Sir David have yet addressed the statement directly. But DJ Fat Tony today revealed the bride, Nicola, was left in tears. Here's Sangeeta Candola.
There was no black cat PVC cat suits. There was no Spice Girl action.
Fat Tony speaking his truth and setting the record straight. The DJ who played at Brooklyn Beckham's wedding has been giving his view from the decks after Brooklyn's bombshell statement branded Victoria's dance with her eldest son inappropriate.
Mark Anthony asks the most beautifulest woman in the room to come to the stage. And then he says, Victoria, come to the stage. Brooklyn's like suddenly, literally devastated because he thought he was going to do his first dance with his wife. Then Nicola leaves the room crying her eyes out. Brooklyn's stuck there on stage. They do this dance and Mark Anthony's like, go, put your hands on your mother's hips. And it was a Latin, it's a Latin thing. And the whole situation was really awkward for everyone in the room.
Fat Tony says it was worse the morning after, the night before.
I did a brunch on the Sunday, which was the most awkward part of it all, because when the bride and the groom leave their own wedding devastated, it kind of like word trickles out, and it was the talk. Everyone was talking about how sad that part of it was.
The DJ says people need to stop speculating and leave the family to get on with it.
As I say, the dance is a very small part of the bigger problem.
Yeah.
I think what we're all missing here is the fact that parents have lost their child, their son, and the son's lost his parents.
Your son Brooklyn, Mr. Beckham. We'd like to reconcile with him, David.
Please.
Brooklyn says he has no plans to reconcile with his parents. The Beckhams are yet to comment. Sangeeta Candola, ITV News.
And that is all from us for now. Charlene will be here with the evening news at 6:30. The news where you are is next. For everyone on the Lunchtime team, have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.